Welcome to New Game Plus, a retro gaming podcast where three guys spend 7 days playing one old game, and then we talk about it. My name's Dustin.
My name's Kenny.
My name is Nolan.
This is episode number 8.
Oh.
8 weeks now.
Eight.
I was thinking 6 or 7.
That means if we'd had a Tamagotchi, I already would have killed it 4 times.
Last week we played Prince of Persia. Have either of you played Prince of Persia since last time?
No.
No.
Well, why not?
I don't want to.
I'll give you a long list of other things that I didn't do with my time if you want.
I'm having Apple II issues. I need to call IT.
Well, did y'all at least watch the movie?
No.
With Jake Gyllenhaal.
Forget
False.
him.
Listen, we moved on to bigger and better things this week.
I
had
No, we
more
did-
important
okay.
things to do with my time.
We'll see about that.
This week we played Civilization 2, but before we get into it, I've got a couple questions for you guys. We are recording the week of Halloween. In fact, we are recording the day of Halloween. Spooky. Did either of you, or
I'm
are
scared.
either of you going to dress up for Halloween?
Yep. I am Dracula.
Kenny?
Good. Not especially. I'll kind of do something, but I'm not going hard.
What does that mean, though?
Kenny's the kind of guy that would wear like a "Hello, my name is" name tag for
Yeah.
Halloween.
I'm gonna just write face or book on my face.
You stole that from The Office.
Well, yeah, clearly.
Is that what you're really going to do?
No. But if I did, I would expect you guys to refer to me as Bookface.
It's very creative.
I know, and original.
My wife is a mime. Her costume is really good.
Is she going to stay mute the whole night?
Yeah, we wore them once, and we're gonna wear them again today. But she wouldn't talk to me when she was in it, like at all.
That's so awesome.
I cut 2 holes in a white sheet. Let me rephrase. My wife cut 2 holes in a white sheet and put it over my head, and I'm a ghost.
Nice.
Ghost boys.
And she is a skeleton. She cut felt bones and hand-stitched them to black clothes, and she's going as a skeleton. So we kind of just did retro Halloween, if you will.
You're just
Yep.
retro all around today.
The most work ever put into a skeleton costume.
Yeah, probably so. She did spend like 3 full days doing this costume, but it does
Awesome.
it does look exceptionally well.
I don't doubt it.
There'll be a lot of Halloween haters.
So for you guys listening, we hope you had a good Halloween and that your costumes were more creative than ours.
Now the important question. All right, so there are probably more, but let's say there were 5 elements to every video game, past, present, and future. Those 5 elements are the story, the characters, the gameplay, the graphics, and the audio. I'll repeat: the story, the characters, the gameplay, the graphics, and the audio. Out of those 5 elements, and I'll start with you, Kenny, so I'm coming your direction. Out of those 5 elements, which 3 are most important to you, and why?
Oh. Of those areas, I think gameplay is definitely most important. You know, just kind of like what and how you're doing, followed closely by like story and character for me. Just because I want to be someone like I want to feel connected and immerse in whatever game I'm playing, and so whether that's thinking hard about strategy or really connecting with a character like emotionally, I want to like feel vested, and I feel like those 3 areas are the areas that do that the most.
You want to feel like the time you're putting into it's worth it because of the characters.
It doesn't even have to feel worth it. It just has to, while it's happening, feel
Equality.
connected. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I would say gameplay is number 1 because I care about the mechanics of the game, and if the gameplay is jankety, then it's not going to be fun. 2 is the audio because that adds a lot to like being submersive or the immersion of the game for me. And the third one is probably story, because I like quality stories, and it helps me kind of get lost in the game. And I really enjoy that, because then when the game is over, I'm kind of sad. It's kind of like when my favorite TV show is ended. I don't want it to end.
Yeah.
So I like that to happen with my games too.
Yeah. Mine is very similar to Kenny's. I might change one of them. So probably the most important one to me would be story. I can forego many of those other things if it's a compelling story. Second would be characters. I'm all about character development, and if there's not deep, good, interesting characters, then I would not be interested in playing the game. And then third is probably going to be gameplay. So that might be identical to your list, Kenny.
Sure, the order was different though.
Yeah, okay, the order was different. That gameplay and graphics, I mean, I can do bad graphics so gameplay, I would have to say gameplay. You've got to have some kind of interesting mechanic there for me to engage with. So
yeah, graphics aren't hugely important for me either. They never have been.
But I love that audio is important to you.
Oh yeah. I feel like it's an area that can be overlooked easily if you don't really pay attention to it. And I've always loved, like, even like 8-bit music. I love video game music. Like, I'll go listen to it on YouTube later at work or something.
Yeah. Speaking of these 5 elements, I wonder how many of them were apparent in this week's video game.
I wonder that too.
Well,
all of them.
Kenny, how about you introduce
all of them?
How about you introduce us to Civilization 2?
Overview. This week we played Civilization 2, one of the best video games of all time.
Maybe we shouldn't have had you do this overview.
Like, objectively though, this isn't just me. 2007 IGN called it like one of the top 10 best video games of all time. And that's fairly recently. Though since then it's had other accolades and before, and it's pretty popular. I only say that because I have a feeling you guys didn't enjoy it as much as me, so setting up some good drama here.
Yeah, we'll see.
But a game I played a ton as a child and have revisited off and on since then occasionally, just on a whim, kind of for nostalgia's sake. And so I was super pumped when we got to play it this week. Civilization 2, if you guys don't know, is the second in a series of turn-based strategy games in a franchise created by Sid Meier. Originally, other people worked on subsequent ones, more and less depending on the game. And
Sid Meier is your favorite protagonist of all time, right?
White Mage, and then second favorite is Sid Meier.
Sid Meier, okay.
Right. It's turn-based strategy, and what you're doing is basically creating a civilization from its founding in 4000 BC and following it all the way up to the year 2020 and trying to achieve victory either by wiping out every other civilization and just massacring everyone, which I guess makes you a victor. Yeah, it's a little morbid. Or by getting off of this planet that apparently you and all the other civilizations are slowly ruining, to go live somewhere better. I guess it's also kind of dark. To go to Alpha Centauri, and those are the two main. I think in Civilization 2, those are the only two ways you can win.
Okay, so those are the terms of victory. You either wipe out every other civilization, or you leave every other civilization.
Exactly.
Kind of brings you to terms with reality there, I guess.
Get very philosophical here.
I never realized it was as dark as it was until I talked through it.
Let me ask, because you said it was turn-based strategy, and that's different than real-time strategy, which is one of the other main strategy type games. And either of you, for those that are listening that don't have as clear of an idea of what the difference is, what's the distinction between turn-based strategy and real-time strategy?
Well, I'll let Nolan go here because I'm going to be sarcastic.
Sure. Real-time strategy, to me, is so much more stressful. What that is, you have either you're playing against AI or another person, and instead of doing all the moves that you want to do, whatever the game may be, like with your army or with your city or with all of those things in Civilization, you're doing them while your opponent is also making moves, and there's no end of turn. Like in a board game, your turn is over, and so then it's the next person's turn. Real time, it's all going on at once, and so you have a lot of multitasking to do to make sure that you're, building your army, meeting deadlines that you need to do. Whereas turn-based is what I prefer, because then you can kind of take your time and look at your options and weigh the options and then make the decisions and then end your turn and then see the results of it afterwards, which that's another reason why I love Fire Emblem. That's my turn-based strategy game. So is that kind of
yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I think so. Kenny, did you say when Civilization 2 came out?
Yeah, 1996, I believe.
And then there was ports or remakes.
They both ported it and remade it a couple of different times. Like they ported it to PlayStation, and then they did one remake, and then they did like two more remakes, and then they did some like supplements as well.
Is it called Civilization 2 Gold? Is that what the remake is called, or is that the port?
Multiplayer Gold Edition is one of the remakes.
Yeah, that's the remake. I think this is the game that a guy played like a single campaign for over a decade, and then a few years ago he posted it, and it was on all social media sites.
I saw that.
He did. It got really popular, like front page of Reddit, and became like an internet thing for a little while. Partly because people who did play this game were real nostalgic about it, but partly because he just slowly, it wasn't like literally a full 10 years of play, but like slowly over 10 years just continued to play one game. And played all the way to like the year almost 4,000, I think.
That's awesome that you can do that with a game.
A really, really long time. Yeah, and everything went south.
So is he just really bad and can't wipe out the other civilizations, or he can't possibly build a spaceship and then leave Earth? Why is he still playing?
The game proper ends at 2020. And so like after that year, if you haven't either achieved victory by wiping everybody else out or by getting to Alpha Centauri, like you don't add any more points. Like you will never get a like you win victory screen at that point.
But the game continues?
And the game will let you keep playing for as long as you want. And so he was really just sort of playing a post game, technically, which most people kind of wouldn't have the incentive to, but he was, wanted to bring it to its resolution, I guess. So. And if your civilizations are all very evenly matched and warfare is going on and just no one can make progress, the later it goes, like more pollution happens and like the polar ice caps melt and everything floods, and so you lose resources, and so you're less effective in your battles, and it just becomes a pretty bleak scenario, I think.
Now, the graphics are pretty limited.
They are. It's a 16-bit game and didn't even push that nearly to its limit. It was very much focused on sort of the strategy and the world building and not being graphically amazing.
Right.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, and I think most of these games, right, most turn-based strategy games are not as focused on having the newest graphics, and you're not going to have these cinematic cutscenes, and you're not going to have all this other stuff. It's focused on the gameplay.
Yeah, I agree with that. Because even newer ones, like, again, with the Fire Emblem series, like the GameCube ones, they look better. I mean, sure, they look a lot better than the GBA ones, and especially the NES ones, but still, though, it's always been focused on like solid gameplay and mechanics.
Yeah,
I was a little surprised, just having been playing like more recent versions of Civilization before jumping back to this one, how much poorer the graphics were than I remember them in my memory. Because like when you're a kid and this game's brand new, like these are the graphics that are out.
Right, and the new civilizations are like they look really visually pleasing.
They've
improved so much.
Absolutely.
Like with the terrain and everything, it's very like really detailed, and it's a huge map, so it's impressive how far it's come.
Nolan, you are you're really into audio. You listen to those things. Was the audio intriguing to you in this game, or bland or repetitive? What did you think?
I didn't think it was bland or repetitive like I did Prince of Persia, but and it's kind of fun that they added the little they'll add little sound effects for the farm, like for farming and stuff like that. And it's not that, it's not that great. It's just a nice addition.
Yeah.
But it didn't stand out to me. I mean, it's, the age shows on it.
Before we get into the gameplay and have more about this conversation, I want to clear this up because it will affect kind of how we felt towards the game, I think. Kenny, and I know the answer, but are you into turn-based strategy games?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you enjoy these outside of just playing Civilization 2 this last week?
Uh-huh.
Okay, and Nolan, are you into turn-based strategy games?
Yes, very much.
Okay, I'm not. I've never been that good at them. I can probably do turn-based a little bit better than real-time strategy because, as you said, it's so stressful for me that I just freak out. Like, I want to go at my own pace. But with these turn-based strategy games, they tend, from my experience, tend to have way too long of a pace. And so we can talk about that. Let's talk about gameplay.
Gameplay.
There are many civilizations that you're able to choose at the beginning of your campaign. There's the Americans, the Aztecs, Indians, French, German, Greek, Romans. I think there's at least 14 of them. Which one did you choose, Nolan?
The Zulus.
The Zulus?
I couldn't pick, so I asked my wife, and she said, like when I got to Zulu, she didn't let me finish. She said, "Be them." So the Zulus.
Kenny?
I played Germans this time around.
And I picked the Aztecs because that's who I always would choose on Age of Empires because they're amazing. The game starts off, at least the game that I picked, because I had trouble understanding, but I think there are only two scenarios in the original edition, yeah? Like two pre-made scenarios that you can go through?
I'm not sure on the scenario front. I know that they went and added quite a few later. That became a really popular thing, is for people to create scenarios on their own, but in the original gameplay, I don't know. I always did kind of the world building piece of it, not the scenarios.
Right, and that's what I think most people do. The scenario, I think there were two scenarios. I think there was Rome, and then there was World War II. But
it like recreates eras of history and has you kind of through them.
But
I thought you could only do the world building one. I didn't know
it'll like put you on specific maps and specific times, and
right. But
that's pretty
kind of interesting.
That's cool, but that's, just as Kenny said, that's not what most people do, I don't think.
No.
Right, that's not like the main gameplay.
Yeah, most people are doing the world-building thing, and so that's what I did. And you're placed out on a map that's shrouded in darkness. I mean, you can only see a few squares around you, and so I guess your first, job is to send units out, typically settlers, to look for a place where you can build a city.
And like Dustin said, you're surrounded by blackness. It's like a tile map, a tile-based map, so you can move squares on a grid, and you have to uncover that land. You have to walk on it to be able to see it, or send out someone to go and find what's there. So it's kind of like you don't know what you're going to get, so I think that's a really cool aspect, like, of a new map. It's kind of exciting because you don't know what you're going to find. You got to
reveal things and figure out where you are, if you have good resources, if you have neighbors nearby. Like, that early game definitely sort of sets the pace for everything else that's going to happen.
You also get to decide kind of what age that you start in, whether that be like the Bronze Age or the Medieval Age, and so you can start as far back as possible, or you can start like right up near the present/future as possible.
Yeah,
and that affects greatly kind of your upgrades and what you're able to purchase and your advances. I guess that's what, because the main, and Kenny, correct me if I'm wrong, I think what I gathered that your main task is to work through these advances scientifically and through military and through just all of these other ways. You're trying to work through these advances. You've got these advanced trees, and while you're doing that, you're protecting your city and or trying to overtake others. And is that kind of like the basis? Is that what you're trying to do?
Absolutely. You're growing cities. You're settling. You're developing technology and building buildings to improve the cities that you do have, and you're really just building a civilization. Either going to war with other civilizations or choosing to trade or ally yourself with them, and it's
It's like largely based on like your resources and then your actions, how they're going to affect your resources. That's what I felt like it was when I was playing it.
absolutely kind of where it's very much a like you have a limited set of resources. How do you use them? Kind of thought process, like a lot of strategy games are.
But this game is not about. I mean, like its focus is not go to war with everyone, right?
No, that's like your option.
If you choose to make that what you want to do, it absolutely can be.
Well, and see, let me make a comparison, because Age of Empires, your goal is to kill everybody else. Like
Right.
you're building up your city, your settlement, but at the same time, you're trying to amass an army so that you can go take out the other people. That's not
Sure.
necessarily. I mean, you said you can play that way in
Yes,
this game.
and there's a lot of people who primarily play Civilization 2 that way.
Oh, really?
I have always been sort of more a strategic and passive kind of person, strategy-wise, and what sort of appeals to me. So I've always tended to play games like this more for the, hey, let's get the science victory, you know?
Yeah, like the first Civilization I played was Civ 4, and like the neighboring tribes, you know, everything was going pretty good. I had my resources, I was discovering stuff, I was advancing, and then I had like a council meeting with another tribe, and they were like, "We hate you, and we're gonna kill you." I was like, "Why?"
Well, I don't think that ever changes, because
Welcome to how the world works.
in my Civilization 2 gameplay this past week, an emissary showed up, which is fine. They wanted 50 gold, and then I only had two options. One was pay the 50 gold, or the
Go
other
to
option
war.
was like, we laugh at your puny civilization, or whatever. And so I wasn't about to pay them 50 gold. You don't show up on my doorstep and say, I want your money. And so
You got to build allies.
But yeah, and so but not like that. And so I said no, and immediately we go to war. Like
Yeah.
that's
Oh, that's how you're gonna be? All right then.
yeah, like you're not going to give us 50 gold? Well, let's battle to the death, you know? That's what it ended up being, which was fine, but I'm weak when it comes to these games, man, and I was, by the time the barbarians had their work with me, and then that emissary and that civilization, you know, went to war with me, I was pretty much done, because I'd only built up one city, and I guess you're supposed to expand and build other cities, Kenny?
You can, unless you want to try the
City.
one city challenge variety of gameplay, which would also, if you're doing it correctly, put you on deity difficulty with like raging hordes of barbarians, and so that's fun. I actually did mess around with trying to do that on Civ 2 a little bit this week, just out of kind of curiosity. I'd finally gotten through that version of the challenge on Civ 5, it being my game recently, and the games are so different, and I'm so less well versed in Civilization 2, except for just sort of memories from my childhood, which, you know, aren't actually ever really informed. Like, I thought I was a baller and the best person at this game ever, and really I had no idea what I was doing. I just would win occasionally. And so that was super difficult, and I failed a bunch and didn't have the time to really kind of learn and go hard at it. But yes, generally you want to expand and build cities and grow, not
And
just sit there and have everybody like dominate you.
I can imagine that difficulty difference has a lot to do with the user interface, or like the ability to like control the map.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? Like in the newer ones, you can just mouse over and kind of navigate that way, whereas in Civ 2, it's like you take
lots of keyboard stuff.
Lots of keyboard stuff, one step at a time, kind of choppy. And if I couldn't navigate it as fast as I wanted to. I was kind of getting frustrated with the interface, because I am used to playing the newer ones. At
Sure.
least some. I'm not a huge fan of them, but
Oh yeah.
it was very different.
Well, then that could lead us right into how it aged.
Aged.
For me, the user interface was one of the most difficult things to overcome. I just think that it was a large difference from video games today, even turn-based strategy games of today.
There were some like mechanical things about how they did the game that you kind of have to learn, in a similar way to like when you pick up a joypad on a game and don't know until you like acclimate yourself to the buttons. It's definitely very different. Like where normally you would like just point a mouse and click it on things, like that doesn't necessarily always do what you think it should do in this game. So I'd imagine, especially coming into this game fresh, there was probably some frustration there.
Do you think, because you're mainly in these, or both you guys are, do you think the format of strategy games has changed significantly since 1996, or do you think it's pretty much the same?
I think it's based on really similar set of principles. I think they've really refined and sort of expanded, what that looks like on a lot of fronts. But sometimes they'll go too far on the, kind of complexity front, and something just simple can be, even more rewarding.
Yeah, I feel like for the most part, it's, the main elements of this genre are the same. And like Kenny said, maybe obviously graphically they've improved. And the biggest improvement, I think, is the user interface and how easy it is
Absolutely.
to pick up and
some more replayability in terms of like goals and variety.
Yeah.
Like on more recent games, you don't have just 2 ways of winning. You have maybe 5 or 6 different ways of winning.
And that's a great improvement.
That are all competing against each other at the same time, and so it brings a lot more variety.
Like in future games, am I correct that you can like build world wonders?
You can do wonders in 2.
But it doesn't win the game for you, does it?
No.
And I might be totally off, but I think that might be a condition. Like you can win.
Have the most world wonders.
They can like contribute to a win. You can have something like what they call, at least in 5, what they call like a cultural victory, which is like your civilization becomes so like worthy of emulation or awe or, what have you. And wonders would definitely contribute to that heavily.
Yeah. So, but there are more ways to go about winning than just the 2 in this game.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. I think in all of the civilization games, you can just destroy everyone else or you can go to space. Those stay kind of as their staple since that was sort of their roots.
I really appreciate that being their roots. Either kill everybody or leave everybody. That's it's very creative.
Or get stuck in an eternal war.
Yeah.
And just ravage the earth.
So I'll say this, and then I want to know if you guys agree or disagree with me and why. But in regards to how it aged, I really do see its longevity. Like I think that people that played this in '96 or around there, I could see why and how they could still be playing it now. But I don't think that it's a game that if you have not played would be easily picked up by people who have never played it.
I agree. I mean, there's newer entries into the series that would be more worthwhile. Not even like the newest one, not even like 5 or 4, but well, maybe 4.
You literally left yourself the option of 3.
Maybe not 5 or 4, probably not 3. So like, just pick up 2.
No, like 4 definitely is a better. I mean, that was my first one, and I enjoyed it. And it's not like I was just dying to play it, but it was at least fun and challenging. So yeah, the second one is definitely not a just entry into the series, in my opinion.
Kenny?
Yeah, I have a hard time saying it because it is such a classic in a lot of people's minds, and really, when it came out, was sort of so groundbreaking on a lot of levels, and because I enjoy it so much. But I would agree that if you want to jump into the Civilization series, unless you want a little bit of a learning curve and don't mind the kind of like full-on older graphics and gameplay, you may want to go with a more recent game. But if you can jump those hurdles, it really is a great classic for really good reasons.
See, I think you're so familiar with turn-based strategy that because you just said a little learning curve. For me, it was a massive learning curve, man. I still don't know how to play this game, and I spent a week trying to play it.
Sure.
I was unable to really enjoy this game and unable to really kind of see its potential because I didn't even know how to get to that point. And that's right. Probably a limitation of my skills and knowledge, but it's also, I think, because it's just different than in some ways from games of today.
Some of it too is even the nature of like how we go about games today. Like you playing this game in retrospect, like found a way of having the game and then opened the game and played it.
Okay, the interface is so like Windows 95. Like did y'all the buttons and everything, and it felt like Oregon Trail-esque that's what this reminded me of. So that was fun thinking back about playing that game. And it's kind of a similar game. I mean, it's a larger scale than Oregon Trail, but the interface shows, or the age of the interface and the operating system shows so poorly.
Yeah. Let's sum this up.
The final shell shock.
Let me share with you my favorite element of this game, because I thought that it was just exceptional. But you are able to, throughout the game, consult the High Council if you would like to. And the High Council will give you guidance and direction on what you should or should not do. And I think you've got 5 different people that you can consult. And these people are, the military head, the scientific branch, the happiness level, and 1 or 2 others. But it's video clips of real life actors, and quote unquote actors, that are dressed up in terrible costumes.
I mean, don't quote unquote them. They were cheesy on purpose.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they had tons of fun recording those things.
Absolutely.
But oh my goodness. It's
those are
cringe, though.
Classic Civilization 2, for sure.
You click on them and they give you advice, and through the different eras of the game, through the different centuries, they change their costumes,
change outfits, yep,
and
interact
their
with
speech.
each other. Did you guys ever talk to them while you were changing governments, where you were in the middle of anarchy? Because if you get to your High Council during anarchy, basically they just all scream and talk over each other, and it's just chaos, and no one will actually tell you anything.
Yeah.
And then I think they walk off the screen or something.
That's great.
It's hilarious.
But the most ridiculous thing, Kenny, is that one of your consultants in every
Elvis.
single era is Elvis.
Absolutely.
Is that Attitude? Is that the...
Yes, it's Attitude Consultant.
Yeah, your happiness level.
And so it's Elvis with the sideburns and with the accent, wearing
Awful.
your different clothing from the different eras.
Awful.
It was super tongue in cheek.
Man.
I mean,
Still, I don't
it
agree
was
with
there
it.
to kind of be comedic relief. I think the Elvis was always a little much for me, even playing it initially. I was always really, guys. But the others I always thought were fun.
I think all of them were to lighten the mood just a little bit, because I mean, even the military guy, I mean, it's just kind of overly done. He goes from this Roman looking centurion guard type thing to the present day where he's in military garb and smoking a huge cigar. So it's very stereotypical.
Oh, they all are.
But it's a lot of fun. That was one of my favorite things. Do y'all have something that you want to highlight as your favorite or least favorite thing of the game?
I don't, actually.
No favorite or least favorite.
I don't have anything.
I mean, I love the game. I could just go on and on, obviously. So
well, say something about it then, because you're a huge fan. So say something.
I am a lot because of just nostalgia. Everybody has that game where you remember playing it as a kid, just over and over and over and over again, and that's definitely this game for me. I love the replayability of it. I love that you can go kind of different technology routes each time to get different advantages over kind of who you're playing. I love the depth that they tried to go to really relating things to history and, cutscenes, and you're not just building random stuff. You're building wonders. You're building wonders that are things that have existed in the world. And I don't know, they're just attempts to kind of do something really grand. Always just felt really fun and to me really replayable.
Did you finish a game this week?
I did, yeah. I finished one sort of as just a refresher fairly quickly.
How?
And I put a little bit of time into it. It takes some time.
I've never finished a Civilization game.
I haven't either, even the new ones.
Kenny, I've played Civilization 5 with you.
Yeah, we played together a little bit back in the day.
Back in the day, what, last year?
Oh, a year and a half ago.
But we played for days, and we never finished the game.
Multiplayer is hard and slow because you have to wait for other people to take turns, and it is a longer game. I think as the games have added complexity with the more recent ones, when you're doing a whole playthrough of a Civilization game, you're probably putting in 10 plus hours.
That's not that long.
That's not that long.
That's not terrible relative to other games.
Oh, yeah, I guess so.
But it's just you're just doing that same, it just feels longer because you're
I guess
in one
that is
world
long
for a
because you're looking
time.
at the same stuff the whole
Right.
time.
It's not
Right.
like an evolving. Well, I mean, it does evolve, but it's not like character development, story changing.
Sure.
Yeah.
You just interact with it in a different way.
Yeah.
And two, it's like if you make some fairly major mistakes early, like you've got like 6 or 7 more hours of like suffering for those mistakes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's not fun.
And so it's a little unforgiving. I don't know. I miss that. I miss when RPGs, if you skilled wrong, you had to go back and play the game again. I kind of like you having to earn what you do.
Now, there were expansions and kind of like DLC made for this game. And part of that was fan-made scenarios where like the fans of this series and of the game could make scenarios like that Rome and World War II one that I mentioned and make it available for other people to play. And I think that is awesome.
In fact, one of the releases that they did had some scenarios from the developers, but then gathered a bunch of ones just from users that had been like posted to the internet and actually like compiled those and released them officially like as an expansion.
That's always cool to see like a community still heavily involved in an old game. Like last week with Prince of Persia, Dustin, I think you mentioned that there have been like people who have made either new maps or like new levels for it.
Yeah.
And I think it's always awesome whenever a community takes a game that far.
Absolutely. Community involvement's like huge part of anything, but especially gaming.
So,
And we want that to be the case with New Game Plus as well. Like, you guys that are listening, play these games with us, send us your thoughts, be a part of what's going on. Makes it all that much better.
absolutely. Every week we play a new video game that is 15 years old or older, and it can be on any console or any system, and we're willing to play that. And we'd love for you, as Kenny just said, to play along with us. Then send us your feedback, your commentary. You can do that on all our social media sites or through email, ngppodcast@gmail.com.
Also, suggestions for games that you loved or hated and want to see us enjoy or suffer through, send them in. We'll add them to our master list. And if we need to, if they get picked randomly, we'll play through them. So.
Yeah, so we've made our retro master list, whatever. We don't have a title for it yet. We've made that available. Right now it's just on a Google Doc, but we've linked that on our social media sites. So if you want to see kind of what are some of the games on the list, then you can look on there, and maybe that will spark your interest. And in fact, there's been some of our listeners that have looked at that list this week and then sent in through Twitter and even through email some other suggestions. Like, we didn't have any of the Sonics on there, and so.
Which is crazy.
Oh,
Yeah, so we had Sonic suggested, and
my friend Nick wants us to do Echo the Dolphin.
yes, absolutely. I don't know when that came out, but I think that's older than 15 years.
It's gotta be. I don't know. It might not be.
Might not be. But this week we're going to randomly select our next game to play. All right,
I'm so stressed right now.
our next retro
I'm so
game.
stressed.
You've got to let me say it, man.
I know, but I don't know if I can handle it. All right, tell me.
Gauntlet Legends.
Cool.
Gauntlet
Nice.
Legends. That is going to be our first arcade game. That did not come out on like a traditional console. That was, at your Pizza Hut. That was at your, Fuddruckers.
This is gonna be awesome.
And that's a classic one too, for sure. Like, we didn't jump into arcades like picking something weird. Like, that's the one as a kid. Like, besides maybe X-Men, that was the one that I actually like lost some quarters playing, because
Yeah.
that game was fun. We'll see if it like stays that way.
And the only problem is going to be us having, going out and having to find the cabinet and actually bring it back to our house.
Just go to the local pizza place. Probably in the back somewhere.
Just live there all week.
All right, so we've already
Amen.
said, but we'd love for you to play with us this week. Gauntlet Legends, get it on your favorite emulator or go to your local game place and get it and play it. Send your thoughts and comments to us. If you enjoyed this podcast, please take a moment and on whatever provider you have you've listened to this podcast on, would you take a moment and just rate and review? It helps us out tremendously. And hey, I don't know if I've told you guys, but Google Play is finally getting into the podcast business. They've let Apple do it for too long with iTunes, and they're starting their own. And so New Game Plus has been approved, and once that starts up, you'll be able to listen to us through, specifically Android devices and through Google Play. So that's pretty cool.
That's awesome. I prefer that
Very
so much
cool.
more because I have an Android.
We appreciate you guys. We enjoy hanging out with you, and we'll see you guys next week for episode 9, Gauntlet Legends.